Hello there and welcome to the Card Grotto. Today I'm adding sparkle to winter projects using the new Wonderful Wishes release from Tonic Studios. For my first project I'm using the Warm Cocoa Wishes stamp set. This is such a cute set. I really love all of the images in this set, but today I'm using the larger girl image at the bottom and I'm going to stamp her onto some smooth white cardstock using the Nuvo Black Shadow Hybrid ink. I'm going to stamp her down a couple of times just to get a nice impression. This ink is suitable for alcohol markers as well as water mediums, so it's really nice just to have the one ink pad for all of the different mediums. I'm going to colour her in with the Nuvo alcohol markers. The markers come in packs of 3, so you get 3 different shades of a colour, a light, medium and a dark in each pack, which is really nice. So it kind of takes out the worry of if they're going to blend well together or not. I used the fair skin tones for her skin. After I'd finished colouring in the rest of the image, I decided that I wanted a bit more depth to her skin tone. And to be honest with you, I haven't really done enough experimenting with these tonic markers to know which colours blend well together. For most part, I've kind of stuck with the colour families that they are sold in, but I didn't really know how I was going to add in any more shading to her skin, so I did go in with Copic markers just to add a little bit of depth around the outside, and the tonic markers blended really nicely along with the Copic markers together, which was really nice. So I'm going back in here with her hair. I'm using the Natural Browns collection for that, and I went over it first and then I decided that I wanted a little bit more depth to the hair, so I went over it again, which is really great with alcohol markers because you can add in as many layers as you want to. Here for the cardigan I'm using the aquamarine colours. These are so pretty and these all blended really nicely together. So I went from darkest to lightest, and then I do add a bit more dark just into the areas that I want obviously to be the darkest. And then for her scarf here I'm using the Parma Violets colours. These are so pretty. I love the tones on these purples. I wanted this scarf to kind of look like a really fluffy kind of ribbed kind of scarf. I don't know if it's supposed to be stripy. It kind of got like stripes in it, but they're not completely, like solid stripes, if that makes sense. So I kind of did it as if it was like a really fluffy large scarf, and she was really nice and cozy. So that's why I coloured it all in the one colour. And then I'm also adding the purples onto the patches of her cardigan and then the cuffs there as well. I thought these colours worked really nicely together for like a nice winter card. And then I'm also using the aquamarines for the bow in her hair and also the heart on the cocoa cup. And then for the cup itself I'm using some light greys, and I did actually use 2 different colours from 2 different collections for this, but they did blend really nicely together. After colouring I fussy cut her out with scissors, leaving a small white border. And then I've taken a panel of white cardstock. This is 4 1/4 by 5.5 inches. That's going to be my finished card size. And I'm blending on some ink here onto this panel. I'm using the Polar Ice ink pad from the Siren Diamond collection. This is a really pretty kind of like a light blue aqua-y type colour. It's really very pretty in real life. It's difficult to see here on camera because it's such a light colour. But I'm taking my time just to build up the colour. I want it to fade up to white at the top, so I don't want to add a really dark concentration of this colour. So I'm using the blending brush here just to blend that on, and like I said, just working in layers. I do add my image over the top just to see if I have enough colour, and I didn't think I did, so I'm going back in with the ink, just adding a bit more there at the bottom. These inks blended really nicely with these brushes. I was very impressed at how nicely they blended, and you can get a really nice kind of fade up to white as well, so that was really nice. And then once I've finished inking the panel, I'm going to spritz it with a solution of Perfect Pearls and water, and this is just going to add a really nice subtle shimmer onto the background. Now I'm going to work on my sentiment. So I've taken the sentiment from the Warm Cocoa Wishes set, and I'm going to stamp that onto some black cardstock with Versamark ink. So I've prepped the cardstock with an anti-static powder tool, and then I've used the sweep brush just to get rid of any of the excess powder. Stamped that sentiment down, and here I'm adding on some Glacier white embossing powder. This is a bit more of a thicker embossing powder, so it works really nicely for this nice bold sentiment. Just applying that, tapping off the excess, and then I'm going to heat set that until it's completely melted, and then cut that down into a strip. My background piece is now dried, so I'm going to add that onto the front of an A2 sized card base. So that's a finished size of 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. I could have blended directly onto the card base, but I wasn't 100% sure how the card was going to turn out. So I like to use panels and just add them onto card bases at the end. I've added some foam tape onto the back of my girl image here, and I'm going to place her on the bottom of the card. Just using some tweezers there to help me with the placement. Once I'm happy with where she is, I can stick her down, and then also the sentiment to the side, and I just use some foam tape for that as well. To add the sparkle onto the image, I'm going in with the shimmer pen. That's the Aqua shimmer pen, and then I'm also adding some crystal glaze onto the heart there on the cocoa cup. And then to finish off, I'm going in to add some drops of the Nuvo drops, and this is in the Simply White colour, and this is the gloss version. So I'm just adding 3 drops there just around this sentiment strip to finish that off. And this card has more of a kind of subtle shimmer to it, but I really like how it turned out. It's very pretty, and that shimmer is difficult to see unfortunately on camera or even on the photos, but in real life it's really nice and pretty. For my next project, I'm using the Snowman Snuggles stamp set. I've stamped that and the sentiment down onto a panel of white cardstock. And I've also stamped the image onto some mask paper, so I've just added that onto the image because I want to do some ink blending in the background. I've taken a sheet of Mylar and I have cut out a circle into that, and I'm using that as a mask. I want the image to kind of look like a bit like it's in a snow globe. I thought that that would be quite pretty. So I'm adding in some ink around the image, and this is that polar ice colour again that I used on my first card. Like I said, it's a really pretty colour and it works well with lots of different other shades I found as well. And now I'm going in with a slightly darker blue, and this is the blue Siren ink, and this is from the Blue Blossom ink collection. And if you use this on its own, it's quite a bold, bright blue. But how I'm using it with the blending brush, it kind of turns into a bit more of a purple toned blue. I just think it's really very pretty. So just using a light hand of that, I wanted the inside of the image, or kind of like the inside of the snow globe I suppose, to be a lighter colour. That's why I used that polar ice colour. And then just using that blue Siren around the edge. Next, I've taken the Winter Wonderland stencil, and I really just want these small snow flurries from the top of the image there on the stencil to be inside the snow globe, to kind of look a bit like snow. And I'm using the Glacier paste for that, and this is the Glacier paste in Frostbite. This is such a pretty kind of pale blue. And if you haven't seen the Glacier paste before, this is so beautiful. It's kind of like a really soft and fluffy, moussey type medium. And it's got a really pretty iridescence to it, so it's really nice and shiny. I'm not using it here in a large way, obviously. You're not going to see that much of it on the card, but it just adds a really nice shimmer to the snow globe or the sky that I've added on. So just removing that stencil, and then I'm going to make sure that I wash that fairly quickly. And then I can just remove the sort of handmade stencil that I made with the Mylar sheet. And then I can also remove the mask paper as well from the image. And then I'm going to colour the image with Nuvo alcohol markers. I did do that off screen just because I thought it would take quite a long time for the video, but I do have all of the colours that I used listed over on my blog. Once the Glacier paste was dry, I actually left that to dry overnight. It did take a little while to dry, even though they're just kind of like small little dots of it. But I wanted to make sure that I gave it enough time to dry. I didn't want to sort of move it around by accident. So I've added that panel onto an A2 size white card base, and I used some foam tape for that. And here I'm going in with the White Blizzard Nuvo drops, and I'm adding this onto the hats of the snowmen. I thought it would look really nice and sparkly and kind of fluffy to add that on top. So I've just added a layer of that on, and then I'm using my craft pick here just to kind of move those Nuvo drops around. It's a little bit difficult to get into the smaller areas on the image, so that's why I'm using the craft pick, just to kind of move it around. And then sometimes I also add in some of the Nuvo drops onto a scrap piece of paper, and then I pick them up with the craft pick as well, and that's quite helpful just to add a bit more on top if you want to. So I'm just going to do that in a minute just to show you that you can do it in this way as well. Once the Nuvo drops did dry, they did crack a bit overnight. I don't know if that's just because I'm using it in a completely different application than what you would usually use it as. Obviously you would use them more as drops rather than kind of using it as glitter glue, but I think that just added to the texture of it. I was quite happy with how it turned out, and I really love the added shine on this card, and you've got that Glacier paste in the sky. So for my last project here, I wanted to create a little tag, and I really love these trees here from the Winter Wonderland stencil. So I just masked those off, and I'm using some distress inks here just to add some colour onto the trees. So I went in first with Twisted Citron, and now I'm going in with Mowed Lawn. And then I'm also adding in some pine needles just onto mainly the left hand side of the trees, just to add a bit more depth to the ink blending. Just using a smaller applicator here. And then I'm going to go in with the Nuvo Glimmer Paste, and this is in the Moonstone. This is such a pretty glitter paste. I use it all the time for Christmas cards. But here I'm using it in a slightly different way, and I'm not covering the entire image, but I'm just kind of adding it more towards the left hand side and also the bottom of the stencil. So I'm kind of letting the spatula sort of grab onto that stencil at the bottom. Ordinarily I would think it would look a bit messy, but it actually kind of looks like snow has fallen onto the tree, and it's kind of built up at the bottom of the tree, which I think is really, really pretty. And again, in real life this is really lovely and sparkly. So I've taken the mouse image here from the Warm Cocoa Wishes stamp set, the stamp set that I used first. And I've stamped out the mouse there, coloured her in with the Nuvo alcohol markers, fussy cut her out, and just added that on with some foam tape again. And the sentiment there is the same sentiment that I used on the first card, but I just used the hugs portion and masked off the rest. I added the White Blizzard Nuvo drops to her scarf, and here I'm going in with the Crystal Glaze just to add to her glasses. I thought it'd be really nice just to add a bit of extra shine there. So that was lots of different ways to add sparkle to your winter projects. I hope you've enjoyed watching the video. Links to the products that I shared will be over on my blog and also in the description bar here on YouTube. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you soon.